Portman, member of the Homeland Security and Foreign Affairs Committee, with me on this and a few other topics. Nice to see you in person.
Morning, Bill.
Senator.
Always good to be with you.
Morning to you. We had the White House on yesterday. They say we are on strong legal ground in this case. How do you see that?
Probably. I mean, the court's going to have to decide this. It's really a case of first impression because there haven't been any Supreme Court cases since the National Emergency Act. There are some cases previously that people talked to, but under the new law, probably, in my view, the courts end up saying this is a political question to be worked out by the branches. You
believe so, huh? Mercedes Slapp made that same case on our program yesterday. She said this.
We feel that we're in strong legal grounds. We know the realities of judicial activism, as you've seen so many times with the Ninth Circuit, for instance. But at the same time, the president didn't want to have to choose this route because he wanted to see if Congress would negotiate a better deal. They, of course, fell short.
She's echoing a bit of what you're suggesting here. And what they would argue is that the president has an obligation to provide safety to the people living here in the United States. And you think they win on that argument?
Well, I think the court's likely to kick it back to us and to say under the National Emergency Act, you know, there will be an opportunity to vote on this. And by the way, the president's proposal for the border, I thought was reasonable. I mean, what he said was, let's use an evidence-based approach, use what the Border Patrol experts in the field actually want. This is the Border Security Improvement Plan. He wanted to fund the top 10 priorities of that plan. And Congress probably has now funded 2 or 3 of those. And with some of these other funds, you know, he can probably fund half of those.
Yeah, so you're probably right, because you can access, what, $4 billion worth before the
Treasury forfeiture funds, and then there's also funding at DOD for drug interdiction that he can probably use without using an emergency. That would be my preferred route, Bill. I think that would be on safer ground, both in terms of the courts, but also it would enable us to avoid setting a precedent that could trouble us in the future. But I do support the president on securing the southern border. People in Ohio care a lot about the drug issue right now because opioids have devastated our state. Well, guess what? 90% of that heroin's coming across the southern border. But also now we have an increase in crystal meth, and almost all of that's coming from Mexico. And it's cheap, and it's powerful, and it's devastating. So we do need to do more on the border with regard to immigration, but also with regard to stopping the drugs and also with regard to the trafficking. As you know, I've worked a lot on that issue. And
you've been a big leader on the opioid issue.
2
more topics quickly. A week from today in Hanoi, Vietnam. What does the president get from this second summit with Chairman Kim?
Well, I think it's good. I think it's very good that they're talking. And, you know, people sometimes criticize the administration for not getting enough verifiable results, but it's a whole lot better than not talking. You know, Otto Warmbier was a constituent, and what I learned in that episode was we need to talk to these people. So it's good they're having the discussions. The key is verifiable. You know, in the past, North Korea has made commitments to us they have not kept. They did it with President Clinton, they did it with President Bush, they did it with President Obama. Now it's time for us to actually see if we can get a verifiable agreement to denuclearize. And, you know, my hope is this meeting will be about commitments, but also a process in place to be sure they're following through.
It's not easy, and a big challenge, too. We'll see what comes of it. As you canvass the country right now, as you watch your colleagues in the Senate, anybody left there in the Senate? They're all running for the primary for 2020. If the election were held today, Senator, the president would clearly run on the economy. And what you're getting for the candidates on the other side, at least the far left of that party, that's where all the energy is. So how does that play itself out, do you think?
Well, we'll see. I mean, you're right. It looks like there are about 10 of my colleagues who are running. Some of them haven't announced yet, and they're mostly running to the left. So it's, you know, it's the party moving to the left. The great middle is where you win elections in Ohio, in our state of Ohio, but also in the country. So we'll see what happens there. You're right about the economy. It's really interesting. Finally, we have not just a growing economy, but wage growth in this country, which is something that you and I have talked about before. And I feel so strongly that we needed to do the tax reform, we needed to do the regulatory relief to be able to get the economy moving in a way that people, working families, can actually see some benefit. And we're seeing that now. You know, we're seeing year-to-year increases in take-home pay, finally. To me, that should be the objective of all of us.
That would be good news, too, if it stays that way. Senator, it's great to see you
Good to see you, man.
Again in person. Rob Portman, the Republican from Ohio. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
All right. 20 past.